Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah, Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz, tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Welcome, everybody. It is tea time with Miss Liz, and I am joined here with Victoria Finch. That's right. I have the incredible Victoria here, and we're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. We're going to be talking about inner child healing, trauma. We're going to talk about her programs that she has coming up and all of that good stuff. So before we get started, we're going to do a little disclaimer and we're going to do bio, and then I'm going to get Victoria to share her TEA, which is transform, empower, and activate. So that's the type of tea we sell in this house. So if you haven't gone over to Miss Liz's YouTube channel, run on over, give that a quick subscribe, ring that little doorbell, and you can watch these tea times at any time at your own pace, at work, at home, uh, in the grocery store. You can listen to Miss Liz at any time. So run on over and do that. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time Live show. Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forth dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment and taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward for may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer inspire awareness and connection and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Time shows are done on Thursday, 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you see a Tea Time on a Monday or Tuesday, it's a surprise tea time or a special tea time. That I all my tongues all starting mixed up here. So now a little bit on my incredible guest. Well, Victoria, as you can see, is a blooming butterfly, and we're going to talk about a lot of things that Miss Liz really resonates with is inner child trauma. So Victoria is the heart healer. She is a two-time international best-selling author, mentor, and life coach who specializes in inner child healing and PTSD release. With over 30 years of experience in the field of energy healing and personal development, she holds a number of certificates. Victoria is certified by the International Board of Coaches and Practitioners and the International Practitioner of Holistic Medicine as a Master Clinical Hypnosis Therapist and a Master Practitioner of Emotional Freedom Technique. She also holds a certification in through field therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, life coaching, solution-based life coaching, and other certifications. Victoria is passionate in sharing her story of going from hopelessness to healing. Victoria uses a range of techniques and approaches to facilitate healing and transformation, including energy healing, intuitive guidance, and personalized coaching sessions. She's particularly passionate about helping people heal their inner child wounds and release trauma, including PTSD, to move forward with confidence and joy. Victoria offers a range of resources and support for people seeking guidance and healing, including one-on-one coaching, group programs, and online courses. She's committed to empowering people to live their best lives and achieve greater joy, peace, and fulfillment. And if you'd like to check her out, you can check out her website at justaskvictoria.com. And I'm going to get Victoria in here. She's in here. Let me get her. So, Victoria, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Awesome, I can. So, Victoria, let's get started. I'm going to take you way back because we're going to talk about inner child healing. So, who was Victoria as a little girl, and who is Victoria now?
Yes, I love that question. The little girl, Victoria, spent many of her days seeking validation, looking for love. Even though there was love all around her, she couldn't see it because she was so stuck in feeling unloved, unwanted. She looked for that in her life and she found it. And when I was about 2 years old, I remember living in a home that wasn't very big. And I used to stay with whoever would take me because I was only 2 years old. And we lived in a small house with 6 kids and parents. And I remember one time my parents asked me to leave the room, and I did. And then I went to my sister's and brother's room, and they also told me to leave. And I didn't know what to do. Imagine a 2-year-old child in diapers, didn't know. And I went and I sat by my parents' door, and that child sat by her parents' door for over 50 years, feeling unloved, unwanted, not cared for. And I looked for those things all my life, well, most of my life until I got my healing, in and out of depression, anxiety, all of these different mental illnesses. And it was all because I felt unloved, never fit in. And that's what that little girl, 2017, I'm on the side of my bed, not caring if I woke up the next morning with a bottle of pills in my hand. And I heard the voice from what I call the divine, from God, that said, I made you on purpose, for a purpose, and this is not it. And this is the Victoria you see today. That Victoria who went and sought healing for herself. In fact, I saw healing from a hypnotherapist, which is why I became a master clinical hypnotherapist, because I saw the power in helping one understand their value, their worth. So the Victoria you see today is very different than that little girl sitting by her parents' door.
Well, and I say this all the time, right? As children, if we're quiet and we're withdrawn, as we get older, we find our voices, right? And we come to the stage and we say, you know what? I'm here now. Hear
Yes,
me and see me, right?
yes,
And that's what I get from all of the stuff that I checked out on you, Victoria, is that little girl that said, you know what? I want to be heard and I want to be seen,
yes.
and I believe in myself. We have to get that self belief in ourselves before we can even say to others, you know what? I'm healing and I can heal, you know?
Exactly. And that's it. It was that feeling invisible, that feeling of being unseen. And I became a pleaser. So it manifests itself in different ways for different people. And for me, it was a pleaser. I would say I would do anything just so I could be liked, even to the point as I was molested as a child. And I kind of thought that was okay because at least they'd like me. And it wasn't until I became an adult and I realized how wicked that truly was to do that to a young girl. And for some, I've worked with some clients. The way they coped is they hid in the corner. They hid in the corner because if I'm invisible, then I know people won't hurt me. If I'm invisible, then I don't have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow and that next moment. Me, I took it to be, I'll do anything and everything I can just so that you will see me and like me.
So, Victoria, we have a question here. Have you ever heard of the invisible syndrome?
I have not.
I haven't either. That's an interesting question.
Yes. Whoever did that question, if you would like to expound just a little bit on it, I may have heard of it, but I may use different terminology. And this is very interesting because my son, he is a behavior therapist, and he works with children on the autism spectrum because he's on the spectrum. And as we're talking, we're realizing that we do a lot of the same things, but we have different terminology for it. So it's probably something I've heard, but in different terms.
Well, and that's the thing, right? A lot of people have different perspectives and different ways of looking at things. So they come up with their own analogy, right, of how they look at it. I've never heard of it. I'm going to do some research on it because I like finding out things. And thank you for that question. If you'd like to just verify who you are, and then I could actually pull you up and see who you are. Uh, Thank you for that. And Victoria, I want to get into your tea because your tea actually brings out the little girl, brings out the middle girl, mid-age girl, and the girl you are today. Because the tea that you gave me was transform, empower, and activate. And that sounds like the little girl, transform. You had to transform in as a child, right? And the
Yeah.
empowerment that you had to find within yourself to activate what you do today.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so let's talk about that tea.
Yeah. So it really comes down to awareness. So in order to get to those steps, there's 5 things that we need that goes into the transformation to activate the 5 steps. And here's the first thing: is you have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge where you are. How are you feeling? See, so much of our lives is spent told to put on your big girl pants, buckle up. Boys don't cry. We're told that so much that we push it down and then push it down. And until we're able to bring those emotions up, we cannot deal with them. So we must acknowledge who we are and where we are. And then from there, this is where the validation comes in. We have to understand that it's okay to not feel well from the neck up, just like from the neck down. You can activate. You can never get out of what I call the basement of life if you don't realize you're there.
Right.
Right?
It's like you wake up one morning, you're like, what am I doing with my life? Like,
Exactly.
you have to acknowledge that it needs change, right? And
Yes.
sometimes that change is really uncomfortable and it's a wake-up call.
It's scary. You
It
can't
is.
transform what you do not acknowledge.
Right.
You can't fix what you don't know is broken. And that's where that transformation. So we get there, but there are things we have to do before we can even get to that point. I had a client and she lost her son tragically. He took his own life. And she was so distraught because of her own upbringing from alcoholic parents, abuse. She would share stories about her father. And it wasn't until we were able to work together and I got there, she wouldn't even drive. She sends me a picture of her driving because she had to work on her first, on what was going on in her. She had to acknowledge her feelings and know to validate them. She had to forgive herself. Self-forgiveness is huge in this. We have to learn to forgive ourselves for what we may have said, what we may have done. And then from the validation is that connection, that acceptance, that connection within. And I'm going to go back to validate a little bit. Another part of this validate before we can even get the transformation is we have to say, I feel this way and it's okay. We have to be able to say, we feel okay. I work with a lot of high achievers and they feel there's something missing in their life, but they feel guilty that they feel bad. It's like I have a good husband, my life is good, but yet there's something missing. But I feel guilty because there are people without food. There are single women who have been wanting, or men who have been wanting a partner for years, and I've got one, and I have no business feeling this way. You have to validate your feelings. You do have the right to feel that way. If you feel it, feel it. What are you going to do with those emotions? That's what counts, is what do you do with them. My client now, she is, and not only does she start driving, she is in intensive grief counseling now. She said, Victoria, I would have never been able to get this counseling had you not helped me. So she couldn't even transform and to get the help until she was able to do these other 5 steps first that we walked her through. I'll stop there in case there's any questions before I give more.
No, a lot of people are just listening right now. So I think what you're bringing to the table, Victoria, is important that we talk about, right? Because a lot of us don't validate how we feel. We don't allow ourselves self-forgiveness. We say we forgive others, but for ourselves, that's something that is very hard to do,
Mm.
especially if you don't know it, right? And especially if you've been that people pleaser because you want to be seen, right? You're like, oh, I'm just gonna make everybody else comfortable, and it's okay if I'm not okay, you know. A lot of people, when they say, Mrs., how are you? I say, I'm okay. And when I say that, I'm not okay. The
Mm.
word okay should be looked at as well. When someone is saying okay, ask a little bit more and see if they really are okay.
I love that. That is, we say, I'm okay, oh, I'm fine. And we just brush it off because for some crazy reason, we think we're bothering people when we're wanting to be honest. And what I have learned is if I'm not doing so good, I will say, today's not my good day. I'm not doing so well today. And if someone wants to engage me in that conversation, we do. If they want to say just sorry and start talking about what they want to, that's fine. But we have to start being honest. I suppressed so much in my life, so many emotions, and that is why I ended up on antidepressants. That's why I ended up on them. It wasn't until I was able to release those things and accept myself and forgive myself. It wasn't until then I haven't, doctors like, I don't know what you're doing, haven't been on them, gone, never needed them again. Those feelings I felt are gone. But it also took that action. I knew I needed to do something. I couldn't stay where I was.
Well, it's realizing that the life needed to be changed, right? Just because
Mhm.
you're put on medication doesn't mean you need to be on that medication for life. Find solutions to get off the medication. So many of us get comfortable, especially when we're living with mental illness. We're just like, oh, we have to take this pill because we have this diagnosis. If we don't take this pill, we're going to get this side effect. We're going to get that side effect. Actually start working on the self within, the inner child, because it's the inner child that's hurting. So, Victoria, let's talk about that inner child, because you gave me the
Yeah.
word empowerment, empower, and I feel that the word empower comes from an inner child because they push us to empower ourselves to move forward.
Yes. That inner child is seeking to be free. It's we, the adult us, that's suppressing that inner child. That inner child wants you to play, wants you to love, wants you to expand your horizon. They know that you're beautiful. But that as we grow, just like that little girl that sat by me, that sat by her parents' door, that inner child, there's something there that I needed to tell that inner child how beautiful she truly was, and that she truly is loved. And
Yeah,
until we can do that, she's just going to be trapped, or he is going to be trapped.
yeah. So, Victoria, what did you do to untrap that little inner child?
Yes. It's amazing how when you figure out you're in the basement and you want to get the heck out, how things start showing up in your life. I happened to be scrolling through YouTube and I came across a famous hypnotherapist, and she was giving a free session. Well, first of all, um, I acknowledged that I was in the basement and I needed to get out. I figured out some way along the line that it was okay to feel what I felt, and then I had to figure out how am I gonna reconnect with that child. And as I was going through, and I saw this hypnotherapist giving this free session, I went and I did it, and it was just life changing for me. And I thought, wow, there is definitely something to this, because now we were able to talk to that child and not push it all down, because that's what we do. Because what you resist persists. So I was stuck there, and until I could go back and have that conversation with that child, that's just what I'm going to be. I had to recognize it. I had to validate myself and forgive myself. And then I had to go back to reconnect with that child. So those are kind of the first 3 steps. And that's, again, why I became a master hypnotherapist, one of the reasons.
And that's something we don't talk about, right, in today's society, is the reconnection of our inner child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when we talk about, we're talking to our inner child is pushing us, you know, it kind of pushes a lot of society to look at us and say, oh, what's going on with this person, right? We don't talk about it freely. These are the topics that we need to be bringing to the table. We all have an inner child within us.
Where is the inner child pushing you to? Is it the itty bitty committee that tells you you're not good enough? I call the itty bitty committee that when you have a great idea and you're a little excited for it, you're like, maybe I can't do that. Maybe I'm not qualified. Maybe people will laugh at me. I'll be judged. That's the thing we have to be cognizant of. What is that inner child trapping us into? It wants to be free. Yeah. What is our languaging? It's just so important as we're reconnecting that we understand our language. How many of us, show your hands, and not if you're driving, but how many of us say, I'm just a mother. I'm just a father. I'm just a sister. I'm just a worker. That just word is a good indication that your inner child is not allowing you to shine as brightly as you could and should.
Wow. You know, I never looked at the word like that. And your email, your website is Just Ask Victoria. So is that the reason why the just is in there?
The Just Ask Victoria came about totally different. I'll tell you the story of the Just Ask Victoria. The Just Ask Victoria came around because I'm kind of geeky. And so people would call and they would literally say to me, I'll just ask Victoria. She'll know the answer. Kind of like the old Mikey cereal commercials, right?
Mikey eats everything.
Yeah. So it's like, Victoria, I know you know everything. That literally people would just tell me that so much. I'd say, okay, just ask Victoria. What's your question?
Right. And I like it. It's so simple. You know, we got to keep things simple.
Yes.
You know, it's just like tea time. Tea time is very simple. We serve a different type of tea here. We don't serve a beverage. You can drink tea all you want. You can have your favorite tea. Miss Liz is not stopping any of you guys. But we really have to start serving what's within us. And we all have a tea. We all have an inner child. We all have a story. We talked about this, Victoria, before we went live, right? Is that one story makes a difference. One story, one cup, one tea, one step. You know, it starts with the one. So, Victoria, what was your one red flag that you were like, oh, I got to change this?
What was divine intervention? Again, sitting on the side of the bed, and this might be a trigger warning, with pills in my hand, not caring if I woke up the next day. Who would miss me? I'm no good. Nobody sees me. Nobody cares anyway. And just as I got ready to take them, I heard the voice that I call the voice of God, the voice of the divine that said, I made you on purpose for a purpose, and this is not it. And I got up, I poured those pills out, and I knew right then and there I had a heart issue. I knew I had a heart issue. And until I got right within myself and until I healed my heart, I was going to stay hopeless. That was my divining moment that I decided no more. She's gone. That Victoria has got to go away.
So Victoria, is that where the heart healer came in?
Yes. So what ended up happening, how I became the heart healer, was I knew I had a heart problem. And so I got busy. That's when I took the session with the hypnotherapist. And I started learning about the mind, neurolinguistic programming, cognitive behavior. I started to learn what makes me think what I think. And I knew I could help others. And then I had Les Brown is one of my mentors. And I remember he would say, you can't read the label if you hit in the can. I had to get out of the can.
Well, we're in it sometimes too much, right? That's
yes,
that
I had to get out of it. I
had
to get out of it. And so I was talking to a friend of mine, and she and I was having a conversation because we were working on some marketing things. And she said, Victoria, you know you heal hearts. So what? She says, yeah, you're a heart healer. She says, I've known you for years. And I've seen what you've done to people. I've seen how you've transformed people. I've seen you heal hearts. That's where the heart healer came from.
I like it. All
I
my
would have
guests
never
have
seen
great
that in
hearts.
myself.
Right. But sometimes it's other people that see stuff within us, and then we say, oh, I am this.
Yeah.
Sometimes we need that acknowledgement of someone else's seeing of us. It's not about their opinion of us. It's about what they see within us that we might not see at that minute. And maybe days later or months later or even years later, we see this and we're just like, oh, they were actually telling me something that I wasn't paying attention to.
Yes.
I just think it's incredible. I love it, the heart healer. So Victoria, we have a question here for the PTSD release. Is there like tools or tips that you use when you're coaching for the PTSD release?
Yeah, I do not have a one size fits all. And that's why I have my 5 steps. And I'm an intuitive coach. So I see what you don't want to show me. I hear what you don't want me to hear. But what I can help you with, again, acknowledgement, validate your feelings. You want to reconnect with yourself. Self forgiveness is really important, and provide this love, learning self love and acceptance. This is where it gets hard. It's like, how do I learn to love myself? I'm so unlovable. And that's when the seeking professional help comes in at. It's like I'm the heart healer because someone saw something in me I could not see in myself. And what is really important if you're suffering for PTSD is you really need to get help. Whether it's me helping you or someone else, because there's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of dynamics in PTSD. Where is it coming from? How are you reacting? How is it showing up in your life? How is it affecting your loved ones in your life? I can tell you, is it showing up as fear? Is it showing up as anger? Is it showing up as depression? I wish I could give you a cookie cutter answer for that, but I would not be doing a service.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is all these diagnoses that are coming to everyone with mental illness, we're being given these labels and these diagnoses, but we're not being told what effects they have. And you mentioned 3 things: fear, anger, and I forget what the third one was. Depression. We're not talking about these things. We're saying, oh, I live with depression, but do you understand depression? Do we understand fear? Do we understand why we do what we do?
That part. Because there is a tendency to treat the symptom and not the cause. And so the easy way, now I am not a medical professional. I am not telling you don't take medicine, because there is a need for it. There really is. How about we get to the solution? Why is this happening? If I say, I'm so stupid, I can't think clearly, and I say these things about myself, the question is that true? Is it always true? Why do you think that way? Maybe when you were 6 years old, you tried to do something or show a drawing to someone and someone says, oh, that's ugly. Well, now you think that everything you do is ugly. Because as a child, from ages birth to, actually in the womb, to age 7 years old, about 80 months, plus or minus, you are in what we call the alpha state. That means you take everything as truth. Everything is true when you're in that age. And so it could have been a comment that someone made that they didn't even realize they made, but you accepted it as truth about yourself. And so what do we do when we accept things as truth? We activate our reticular activation system in our brain, and we look for things in our environment to make it true. Just like you buy a red car, you see red cars everywhere. And now all of a sudden we're making it true. All of a sudden we don't have good relationships because we're not paying attention to that great relationship we may have with a sibling or to those great friendships, we are concentrating on a few relationships that went bad. And what we have to do is to be able to look outside of that and ask ourselves the question. If you find yourself, if you find yourself saying bad things about yourself, ask the question, is that really true? And who's speaking? Who is speaking these words to you? Is it that child? Because that 2-year-old child sitting by her parents' door feeling unloved spoke a lot of things to me that I wasn't lovable. And that's what I believed, that I wasn't lovable. However, what ended up happening was my father came out of the room not knowing that I was sitting by the door, and he picked me up and was walking me up and down the hall. I didn't remember that part until I went further into hypnotherapy and regression work, because emotion is energy in motion. So the fact that I felt unloved was stronger emotionally to me than my dad picking me up. So memories are usually not true. Now, if you've experienced trauma, I'm not saying these things did not happen to you. This is a totally different conversation. But what I'm saying is memories tend not to be true. Go out with a friend. Ask them to talk about the evening. You're going to have two totally different stories.
Well, it's like that 6 and 9, right? The different perspective of how we see stories and how we see trauma. You know, some people might look at trauma a little heavier than others. I know for mental illness, we deal with a lot thrown at us, and there's a lot of stigma at us, right? If we don't have that depressed, sad face, we don't have mental illness. You know, they put this look on it. Oh, it's poverty and poor people that have mental illness. You know, we got to really stop the stigma. It affects everyone out there, all walks of life. Mental illness is affecting every single one of us. And if you're not living with it, you know somebody who's living with it, you know? And how can we make the difference with mental illness is by getting to know people, by getting to understand. Today is a bad day. Like you said, Victoria, at the beginning of the show, you know, if I'm having a bad day, you're going to know I'm having a bad day. And I'm the same way. Let's be really transparent. And let's say, you know what? It's just a hard day, guys. Tomorrow might be better. The next day might, you know, it'll get a little lighter. We never know what anyone is living with, you know, because we put this face on, like this mask on of this is who we are. This is what society wants to see. They don't want to see the happy face, because if I have a happy face, I don't have mental illness, right? If I have all my ducks in a row, I don't have illness. You know, we all are affected differently, and we all cope and mask differently with mental illness. Something you mentioned a little earlier in the show is autism. And I find it really the universe doing its magic again. Tonight's guest, Randy, also is a mother that lives with autism. And she deals with mental illness as well. So I feel like the universe has put my two guests together once again this week. And they both have purple hair. So, so the universe works really, you know, you got to really pay attention. You got to look at the little signs, you know, because all of you guys are booked at different times. So the universe knows who needs to be together and who needs to align together. So Victoria, I want to get into the autism. So you said your son has autism, or do you have autism?
My son, he's on the spectrum.
So was he early diagnosed or later diagnosed?
Very early. He was diagnosed very early in life. It's interesting because as a mother, you deliver this baby for all intensive purpose. It's just perfect. Everyone's perfect. Doesn't matter. As a young mother, we tend to count fingers and we count toes, and the baby's breathing and the baby's weight is good. And we're just so thrilled that we have this healthy child. And in my case, when my son was about 3 years old, we noticed that he started rocking. He would rock, get very attached to things. He didn't have standard. People with autism tend to take things directly. For instance, a 3-year-old playing, if you give a 3-year-old block or a toy train, they would tend to stack them, right?
Yeah.
Or they will use their imagination. But for someone with autism, in most cases, a block is just a block. It's literal. And we started noticing that. He wasn't speaking at the time. He speaks now. But at the time, he was nonverbal. And so we felt like, oh, there's something going on here. And I want to really talk to the mothers. In my case, I knew he had it, but I kind of ignored it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So he did get a speech pathologist. He had some things at school, he had help at school. He had helpers and stuff. But I really ignored the autism itself. Okay? It was more, he's a little particular. And this was very hard on him that now he's 22 years old. And there was a point where I didn't really have high expectations, or they were too high. Because in our house, the GPA is 3.5. And in our house, we had all these kind of rules.
Yeah.
And I would tell my son Cameron, and I'll speak his name because he really wants me to talk about this because he's really big on awareness. He's like, Mama, tell the world. And I noticed we could not tell him to do 2 or 3 things at a time. I could not say, hey, when you walk past the television, turn it off, make sure you turn off the kitchen light because we're settling down for the night. And by the way, hang up your coat. He cannot do that. He could not do that. And I could not understand why he could not do that because his brothers and sisters could do it. Listen to what I just said. His brothers and sisters could do it. We have a tendency to compare our children. I've learned a lot in this. And I had to realize that Cameron is Cameron. He is not his brother. He is not his sister. And I had to understand him on his terms, how he communicated, and he jokes I say he jokes, but he will say that he is so literal on things. Sometimes he won't pick up on social cues because it's just literal. Like if he's hanging around and you're like, oh, I think it's time, to go to bed. He'll just sit there until you say, hey, I'm going to bed. Can I talk to you tomorrow?
Well, and I think it's really important, Victoria, what you're saying, right? Is you're talking to the moms out there. And as moms, we want our children to be okay. That fear, it kind of detour, it takes us onto a different path, right? This can't be happening. Maybe he's just a little, and it is right. We do compare our children, and we have multiple children. We do compare our children, whether we want to or not. We do. All mothers out there, we need to start being really honest with ourselves. We do compare our children. You came from a family of 6.
Yes, I did. And the thing about this too is this whole self-forgiveness thing. He's 22 years old now. He got a scholarship for college. He has 2 championship rings from football. And now he's a behavior technician, and he works with autistic individuals. And he can see things. And it's interesting because there's a part of him that says, Mom, I'm really happy you raised me the way you did, because he feels that if I had given in to the autism, perhaps I would have maybe tried to medicate him. Maybe I wouldn't have expected as much from him as I did. Maybe I wouldn't have pushed him because I would have said, oh, Cameron can't do that. Don't do this. But I didn't. And he's really grateful for that. But I still had to really forgive myself. And even now I feel myself getting a little emotional. That I just had to forgive myself for doing and being the mom I thought I needed to be at the time. And I really want mothers and fathers to really forgive themselves, because we all do the best we can with what we have.
Yeah. And I think it's deeply important, Victoria, with the work that you do, right? You work with a lot of women. I want to get into some of the programs that you have coming up, because you have an incredible program that's coming up that's 6 weeks. a
Yeah.
6-week study. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Put my glasses on.
How did that come about? Because this is a pretty incredible program that you're bringing to the table.
Yes. So I did mention the divine, God speaking to me. You call your divine, the universe, call it whatever you want to call it. There's whatever. For me, I call them God. And I noticed that in my church, which is a fairly large church, that women 50 and older are basically ignored. Everyone's kind of wanting the young people, right? The youth and everything. And I noticed that even in society, we're often overlooked. We are. And if you look at even television and ageism and all of that, and I tend to come up with solutions to things. That's how my brain works. And I thought, wow, what could we do? I could leave the church and I could complain to everyone about it, or maybe there's something I could figure out about it. So I came up with a program. Women Like Me actually was inspired, I believe, the Holy Spirit gave me this program. And really, it's where we envision a community, a church community, or even an outside community, where the wisdom and legacy of women over 50 are seen, heard, and acknowledged. When I grew up, in the church, we had something called church mothers. Everybody knew who the church mother was. Everybody knew who she was or who they were that they could go to. And we're talking about mental health. I truly believe that if some of these young people had someone they could talk to that were non-judgmental, that accepted them, we would not have the suicide rates. We would not have the mental illness rates. It's because we suppress so much and we have no one. So what I wanted to do was to take that wisdom and get these women together so that they can actually close that generational gap, right? My son and I were going to be doing a podcast soon, and it's called Gen Z Meets Boomer. And it's the Cam and Mom show, Gen Z Meets Boomer, because we really have to share our knowledge with these young people, but not in a judgmental way, but in a loving way, and where we're fostering a legacy of faith and guidance to these younger people. Now, younger people would be in their 30s. How many young adults grew up with immature parents that were never heard, they were never seen, they never felt love? Wow, what would it be like if they had a grandmother? A mother's mental health has the greatest influence on a child's mental health. How many people would call their grandmother for advice? Right? So I'm bringing these grandmothers up, and the 6-week study is really to help them be equipped, because what I do know is that God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the call. And so many times as women, we don't think our story matters. We don't think we matter. Men too, because the idea is to start women like me, because it's me. That's how I was. That's what I felt. But to move this over to men as well, because men feel invalidated. They have wisdom. But right now it's women like me, and we're going to study 6 women of the Bible. We'll study Sarah, and we're going to talk about patience and building of community. Week 2, we're going to talk about Rahab. And the reason why? Because she was a prostitute, and people have to understand there's nothing you've done so bad that you can't make a difference in lives of others. You can do it. Then we're going to study Esther, how she was strong, and she even went to the fact where even though her life was at risk, she stepped into her purpose. So we have to learn what is our purpose and how do we step into it. That's something else. And then our body, our minds, we have to care about ourselves. You said earlier, we take care of other people before we take care of ourselves. I want to change that. I want to teach women and people of the world to pour from your saucer and not your cup. Give from your saucer, not your cup, from your overflow. And then we'll discover in our unique gifts, that's Deborah. And then we'll go into Mary Magdalene, that's the action. because nothing matters unless you activate.
Victoria, I like what you just said. Pour from the saucer, not the cup. We focus so much on our cups. We're sitting here on tea time, and my little ringer is just going off here. Ding, 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 ding. It's we're so stuck in it sometimes. We're so our cup. It's what we put in the cup, and sometimes it overflows onto that saucer, and it makes a big old mess. And let's just serve from the saucer. Let's stop worrying about the cup. And you said people pleasing, because we wanted to be heard, we wanted to be seen. So we're going to do anything to be seen, and it doesn't matter at what cost to ourselves. We want to have everybody taken care of. And as mothers, we do this. As parents, we do this. We want to provide for our families. And sometimes we're just like, you know what? Our cup is full. We can't take any more. And it goes onto the saucer. So let's start serving from the saucer. I really love that phrase, pour from the saucer, like serve from the saucer. And we can all make a difference. Like Victoria, like you came from being unloved and feeling like you didn't fit in to this incredible person. Like I highly suggest everybody go and check out Victoria. Even if you don't work with Victoria, check out my tea time guests. Check out what they do, what they've overcome, how they serve today, because we all serve differently from how we became, trauma and triggers and mental health, the spectrums, everything comes to our cup, and the cup gets full.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to go to the saucer. I really like that phrase, Victoria. Thank you for that saucer, because I love the saucer.
I'd like to give just a few signs that your inner child is crying for freedom, or maybe you're suffering for trauma and you pushed it down for so long you don't even recognize it because it's such a part of your life. And these are really simple. One, you apologize a lot. You say, I'm sorry a lot. And the reason for that is because somewhere along the line, you have felt that it's your fault for everything that's happened to you. If your parents divorced, that's trauma. It's your fault they got divorced. If your parents are immature, it's your fault. And you lived in fear. And so you apologize constantly. So that's one thing. You're constantly apologizing. Here's another thing. Do you speak loud? Is your voice loud or is it soft? Because if it's loud, you're trying to get attention. You're like, notice me, here I am. If it's soft, then you're hiding. There's this middle tone that we can have. That's another thing. What is our voice? How is our voice? The inflection in it. And then something else you want to look for is that people pleasing. Are you constantly pleasing other people? Do you feel that? Do you say things like, oh, I'd give the shirt off my back to my neighbor? Okay. It's freezing cold. Keep your shirt on. Are you taking care of yourself? Self-care. Do you overcommit? And you mentioned that, Miss Liz, about overcommitting. Are you overcommitting so much because you are trying to keep so busy that you don't want to be alone with yourself? And you just feel you're only good as much as you can give to others. So those are just some signs that your inner child may have experienced trauma, or you've experienced trauma, or you just need to free that inner child.
And I think that, it's okay to say we're hurting, and you mentioned something a little earlier, the word just. I want to get into that just a little bit more, because you're sharing stuff, Victoria, and I'm sitting here as a survivor, as a warrior, as an advocate myself, and I'm saying I do a lot of these things still to this day. So how can we remove that inner child from holding us back?
Yeah. So we have I have different modalities that I use, anywhere from hypnotherapy to emotional freedom techniques, cognitive behavioral therapy. One of the things that I do is a chair exercise. And in this chair exercise, and it's called different things, you get really calm. I calm you down. I slow down your brain patterns so that you're able to relax. And then I have you have a conversation with that child. But there's a lot more that leads up to that. But you go to that little girl, that little before 7-year-old child, you go to that child. What would you say to that child? How is that child feeling? You go to your teenage, that 15, 16-year-old. Maybe that child got the nerve up to ask for someone for a date and they got shut down. What would you say to that child? How about that young adult, that 20-year-old child or adult? What would you say? And so we go through this. And it's so freeing because you're able to have these conversations with these younger you to bring you up to the today you. For instance, I had a client and she said that one of the reasons she felt unlovable was because her mother never hugged her. She said she knew her mother loved her, but she didn't. That's the thing. We know, but we don't feel. I know I shouldn't feel this way, but you do. So let's get to the heart of the matter. And she said, I never felt my mother really loved me. I knew she loved me, but I didn't feel she loved me. And we went back and we did regression work with her. And she remembered an incident when she was 6 years old. She's playing in her living room. A woman knocks on the door and she wants to get up to hug the woman. And her mother says, no, don't hug her. Don't hug strangers. You don't need to be hugging people. And her mother told her not to hug this woman, and she didn't understand that. So as it turned out, in working with her, what she realized was that her mother was trying to protect her from this stranger. And she went and she talked to her mother about it, and her mother actually remembered the incident, strangely enough. She calls me, she sent me a Facebook message out of the blue, and she's like, I just want to thank you. My mother and I have the best relationship. After I worked with you, I asked my mother to hug me, and we've been hugging ever since.
We all got to get a little bit more hugging.
We've been hugging ever since. But all this time, and she was probably late 40s, and she really didn't realize she was operating like that. But she would say, anytime I came up with an idea and I got close to doing something, I would pull back and I wouldn't do it. Why? Because she pulled back from that hug when she was 6 years old. We really have to get deep in why we do what we do.
Well, it's the understanding, right? Acknowledging why we do what we do. It goes right back to the beginning of the T, to transform, empower, and activate. I want to get into the word activate before we wrap up. When you hear the word activate, what comes to mind for you, Victoria?
Action itself. What comes to mind for me right off is nothing changes until I do. Nothing changes until I do. And until I activate my healing, until I activate my self-love, until I activate my self-forgiveness, nothing's going to change. I can't transform without the activation.
Victoria, we have a question here. The chair exercise that you do, is that through hypnosis?
It's a relaxation meditation technique.
Okay.
It's not deep trance.
So what's the difference between hypnosis? Because there's different degrees of different.
Well, so right now you and I are having an engaged conversation. We are in what's called the beta brainwave state. We're beta brainwave. From beta, there's alpha. Alpha is going to be right before you go to sleep and right before you wake up. We call that the learning stage. That is your relaxation stage. That is the stage that children are in for the first 80 months of their lives. And from there, you go to theta. Theta is right before sleep. Right before you go drift off to sleep, you go into theta. And then that's when the melatonin is starting to take effect more. And then that will put you into delta, which is restorative sleep. as a hypnotherapist, the major difference is depending on how deep the work is, I might have to take you down. I may have to relax you so far to where you're in theta. That way, we get rid of the itty bitty committee. We get rid of all the I don't like myself. We get rid of all of that because we have bypassed the prefrontal cortex and we've gone straight to the subconscious mind. Okay. And that's what a hypnotherapist will do. We'll take you down to that lower brain pattern so that you're able to really get deep in what's happening with you. Very often we'll use the alpha, which is a cheer exercise, which that's just the learning, that's more the relaxed, the meditative state. So those are the different areas that we use as hypnotherapists.
And we have another question here for you, Victoria. How many sessions should one person have of hypnosis?
Hypnotherapy, it really depends. I can be very rapid, and I don't charge per session. I charge by result. If you want to have better confidence, if you want to have a better relationship, that's how I do my fee structure. Because whether it's one session or 100 sessions, we're going to get you that result. And what tends to happen is a lot of people will go to, and that's fine if they want to bill by the hour or whatever, that's fine. But for me, it's what do you want to achieve in your life? And whatever it takes, we're going to get you there. I've had clients where I've worked with 2 sessions and they were done. I had one lady, she ended up writing a best-selling book because she said her mother told her nobody wanted to listen to her voice. We had 2 sessions, now she's a best-selling author. I've had other where I've spent 12 weeks with them. So it all kind of depends, because sometimes you think you're coming in for confidence, and that's not really what's wrong. It's kind of like Jack Sparrow said, the problem is not the problem, right?
Well, that's it, right? Sometimes we go in and we're like, this is the issue. It's like when you go into a doctor, right? And your big toe is hurting. It's the toe. But it could be something with the leg. It could be something with the back, that's affecting the toe. We just assume a lot, right? In life and that. So, Victoria, what final message do you have for everybody today?
The thing I want everybody to know, and you should, when you listen to me, this is going to be so apparent, and that is, I see you. You matter, and you are enough.
Well, thank you so much. And if anybody would like to reach you, Victoria, could you read out and spell out your website for everybody?
You can reach me at justaskvictoria.com. That's JUSTAskVictoria.com. In fact, you can find me all over the internet if you type in Just Ask Victoria. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. You can find me everywhere. If you type in Victoria Finch, the Heart Healer, you'll find everything.
The Heart Healer is the big one. Victoria, I want to wrap it up. With your favorite color is blue. And I see a little bit of blue in your hair. And you had this debate on should I be purple or should I be blue? So what's with blue? Because I love the purple and the blue mixed together. It's magical.
Oh, thank you. The blue, it's water. See, one thing that really affected my life is when I learned to be like water. Water flows. Water, if you look at the mountains and the water flows down from the mountain. I'm the drop in the ocean that creates the tidal wave. It's water.
I like it.
We talked about the one thing. If I could make one person's life better, I've created the ripple effect. So the blue is the water.
And I'm going to wrap up with your one word was joyful.
Yes.
Why joyful?
Joy is something that cannot be taken away from you. People say happiness is an inside job, but I believe happiness is because of something has happened to you. Joy, on the other hand, is so deep within your soul, and it is a God-given right to be joyful, that no one can take your joy. Viktor Frankl said, the last of humans, a man's right is his ability to determine his attitude in any given set of circumstances. Joy will do that.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this tea time and you sitting down and sharing your tea with all of my listening audience. And if you're watching the tea time, push hashtag replay. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I always like to know where you guys are coming in from. And we will be back at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the second tea time with a returning guest from season 3, Randy Lee Boslav. And she's going to be sharing about her mental illness and autism, living with it, and also her new books. So come and check that out. Come back at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to share a different type of tea at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And until then, keep serving your tea and keep serving from the saucer, not the cup, because that's the one thing that I've learned today from Victoria. So thank you again, Victoria. And thank you for all the viewers and listeners. I do appreciate all of you guys. I could not do this without all of you guys. So thank you again. And I'll be back tonight with the second cup of tea.
Thank you.